I've reviewed hundreds of retirement plans over the past 20 years, and many financial aware people I work with still get this wrong. Do you actually know if you're on track? I'm Jerry Bullock, a financial advisor at Radiant Vest and a fiduciary. By the end of this video, you'll have run a 3-part retirement savings self-assessment using the same framework I use with clients. And you'll have a better idea what your gap number means and whether it's fixable. I'm going to walk through this with a real scenario, a client I'll call Sandra, so you can see the numbers the way I do. Here's the comfortable assumption I hear constantly. My 401k is growing. I'm probably fine, and I understand why people feel that way. But growing and on track are two very different things. The real risk isn't that you don't care, it's that you don't have a benchmark to measure against. And I know what you might be thinking. Every situation is different. You're absolutely right. That's exactly why the benchmark matters. It gives you a starting point so you can see where your situation diverges and what to do about it. Quick note, before we dive in, this video is for educational purposes only. It's not personalized financial advice. Please consult with a qualified financial professional before making any financial decisions. Here's what most people miss. They check one number and call it done. Maybe they look at their 401k balance and compare it to some online rule of thumb. But there are actually 3 benchmark layers that tend to paint the full picture. Your savings rate, your balance by age, and your income replacement number. Most people only check one. I'm going to walk you all 3. Let me introduce Sandra. She's 56, single, an HR director earning $110,000 a year. Her house is paid off. She's been contributing 12% of her income to her 401k, which is $13,200 a year. And she feels like she's doing the right things. And she is. But let me show you what the savings rate benchmark actually says for someone in her situation. The standard guidance you'll see online is 10 to 15%. Sandra is at 12, right in the middle of that range. That sounds okay, right? Here's the problem. That range was built for someone starting at 25 and retiring at 65. Sandra is 56 with 6 years to retirement. At that timeline, families in similar situations tend to need a savings rate closer to 18 to 20% to close the gap. Sandra is currently at 12. That's a 6 to 8% shortfall in savings rate alone. And that's before we look at her balance. Now, let's look at the second benchmark, balance by age. You may have seen Fidelity's guideline have 1 times your salary saved by 30, 3 times by 40, 6 times by 50, and 8 times by 60. At 56, Sandra would be expected to have somewhere around 6 to 7 times her income saved. At $110,000, that's roughly $660,000 to $770,000. Sandra currently has $520,000 in her 401k and $48,000 in her Roth IRA, so about $568,000 total. Against the lower end of that range, she's looking at a gap of roughly $92,000. Now, before that number causes any alarm, and I want to be clear about this, that gap is not a catastrophe, but it's a signal. Let me show you what Sandra's current trajectory actually looks like. Using IncomeLab, the planning software I use with clients. Here's Sandra's profile. 56, $110,000 income, $568,000 in investable assets, targeting retirement at age 62. At her current savings rate of 12%, this is the projected landing point at age 62. Now, one important note on the Fidelity multipliers. They tend to work well as a starting point, but they were designed around average earners with traditional retirement timelines. If you're a higher earner or if you're planning to retire before 65, the way Sandra is, the multiplier alone may understate what you actually need. That's why we run the full 3-part check instead of stopping here. Now watch what happens when I adjust those 3 inputs. Her 401k contribution, her Roth IRA, and a planned conversion window. The projected picture at 62 shifts meaningfully. The third benchmark is income replacement, and this is where Sandra's situation actually starts to look more manageable than the first 2 benchmarks suggested. The standard guidance is to target 70 to 80% of your pre-retirement income in retirement. For Sandra, that's roughly $77,000 to $88,000 a year. But here's what changes that number significantly. Her house is paid off, no mortgage payment. When I work through Sandra's actual spending needs, her realistic retirement budget is closer to $65,000 to $68,000 a year. That's meaningfully below the 80% rule of thumb, and it shifts the math in her favor. Now, let's look at where Sandra's income may come from. She's planning to delay Social Security to 67, not 62. That decision alone could increase her estimated benefit from roughly $17,000 a year to approximately $24,000 a year. During those bridge years from 62 to 67, she draws from her portfolio. And here's where a strategy I've used for clients in Sandra's situation may make a real difference. In my experience, the years right after retirement before Social Security begins can represent a valuable window for Roth conversions if the timing and income levels are right. Sandra's income drops significantly when she retires at 62. That may create an opportunity to convert pre-tax 401k dollars into her Roth IRA at a lower tax bracket during those years. In Sandra's case, I'd be looking at doing conversions at ages 60, 61, and 62, and stopping there intentionally. Here's why that matters. Medicare starts at 65, and Medicare uses a 2-year look back on your income to determine premiums. That's called IRMA, the income-related monthly adjustment. If Sandra had done a large conversion at 64, that income would show up in her Medicare premium calculation at 66. By stopping conversions at 62, those years fall completely outside the IRMA look-back window. I'd recommend coordinating this type of strategy directly with your CPA or tax advisor, since the right conversion amount depends on your full tax picture. When I run Sandra's adjusted scenario, maxing out her 401k with catch-up contributions at $31,000 a year, adding $8,600 to her Roth IRA annually, and building in the conversion plan, her projected portfolio at 62 could land in the range of $920,000 to $950,000. Combined with her delayed Social Security benefit and a paid-off home, Sandra's income picture at 67 tends to look significantly more stable than the first benchmark check suggested. If this kind of straight talk planning content is helpful to you, subscribe to the channel. I put out a new video every week. Now here's the part I want to make sure lands. When Sandra first saw that $92,000 gap in our initial benchmark check, her reaction was what I'd expect. Quiet concern. She'd been doing the things she was supposed to do, saving consistently, not spending recklessly, and yet the number said she wasn't quite there. What changed the conversation wasn't a dramatic overhaul. It was 3 specific adjustments: increasing her 401k contribution to the catch-up maximum, adding consistent Roth IRA contributions, which she was eligible for at her income level, and building a deliberate conversion plan during her early retirement years. None of those adjustments required her to work longer than she wanted. None of them required selling her home or radically changing her lifestyle. The gap closed because we had a number to work with and a runway of 6 years to work with it. Being behind on a benchmark doesn't mean your retirement is in trouble. It means you now have something most people never get: a specific number. And a specific number is something you can actually work with. The people who struggle in retirement aren't usually the ones who were behind at 56. They're the ones who never ran the check. I put together a pre-retirement readiness checklist that covers the key areas most people need to review in the 10 years before retirement, including savings benchmarks, tax strategy, and Social Security timing. It's free, and the link is in the description below. Now that you've run the benchmark check, there's a question that comes up for almost everyone who does this, and it's the one that actually determines whether your retirement works long term. When do you actually stop working? In the next video, I walk through why most people retire too early and why so many of them quietly regret it. The math behind that decision may change how you think about your timeline. Watch it next. This video provides educational information about retirement planning concepts. It is not personalized financial advice. For advice specific to your situation, please consult with a qualified financial professional.